May 8, 1945. The guns of Europe fell silent. Across the harbors of Kiel, Wilhelmshaven, and Bergen, steel hulls lay idle in the cold spring mist. For years, these dark silhouettes, sleek, narrow, predatory, had stalked the Atlantic like ghosts. They were Germany's U-boats, the wolves of the sea. Now they floated without purpose, their conning towers marked by surrender flags. The hunters had become the hunted. Kriegsmarine signal log, May 1945. Allied troops approached the harbors cautiously, rifles raised, unsure whether the surrender was genuine. The air reeked of diesel and salt. Gulls circled above half-submerged wrecks. Beneath the surface, hundreds more waited, crews unsure whether to surface or scuttle. Some captains, bound by pride, ordered the sea to claim their vessels rather than let them fall into enemy hands. Over 200 U-boats were deliberately sunk in those final days, a graveyard of iron sealed by loyalty to a defeated Reich. U.S. Navy report, Operation Deadlight, 1946. For the men of the Kriegsmarine, the end came not with gunfire but with an unbearable silence. In concrete pens once alive with hammering and echoes, young sailors sat smoking in the dim light, listening to the Allies' broadcasts. Outside, British and American officers catalogued the ruins. What they found stunned them. Advanced propulsion systems, snorkels allowing underwater travel for hours, acoustic torpedoes that could track propeller noise, technologies that were years ahead of their time. Admiralty Technical Mission Report, June 1945. Just weeks earlier, these same submarines had been terrorizing convoys across the North Atlantic. In the early years of the war, their reign had seemed unstoppable. They struck at night, unseen and unheard. Their attacks coordinated by radio intelligence and the dreaded wolf pack tactic devised by Admiral Karl Dönitz. At its peak, the U-boat fleet had over 1,150 operational submarines, strangling Britain's supply lines and threatening to starve the island nation into submission. British Naval Intelligence Summary, 1942. But by 1943, the tide had turned. Allied advancements, long-range patrol aircraft, radar, improved depth charges, and escort carriers had transformed the hunters into prey. U-boat crews faced near-suicidal odds. Survival rates plummeted below 30%. Still, the submarines fought on, fueled by the illusion that some miracle weapon would turn the war again in Germany's favor. U.S. Navy Anti-Submarine Warfare Division Report, 1944. When the surrender order came, confusion reigned. Admiral Dönitz, briefly succeeding Hitler, commanded all U-boats to cease operations and surrender at designated ports. Yet many captains refused. Some fled toward Argentina, others scuttled their vessels in deep waters. From Norway to the Azores, Allied forces intercepted transmissions of desperate crews, unsure whether to obey or vanish. Kriegsmarine radio intercept, May 1945. The Allied navies now faced a question unlike any in history: what to do with hundreds of the most advanced submarines ever built. The threat of a new German uprising lingered, and the world was already fracturing along fresh ideological lines. The Soviet Union demanded its share of captured vessels. The Americans and British hesitated, wary of handing the blueprints of their former enemy's most lethal weapon to a new rival. Allied Control Council meeting notes, July 1945. Under the codename Operation Deadlight, a grim decision was made. The vast majority of surrendered U-boats, some 116 of them, would be towed out to sea and deliberately sunk by naval gunfire and explosive charges. The idea was simple: eliminate any chance of their use again by anyone. But the operation was anything but simple. Winter storms tore cables loose, submarines capsized during towing, and several slipped beneath the waves before reaching the designated scuttling zones. Royal Navy After Action Report, Deck, 1945. Witnesses recalled eerie scenes: grey hulls lined in rows, flags fluttering limply, sailors watching their once-feared machines dragged to watery graves. It was like drowning a pack of wolves, one British petty officer wrote. Personal Diary, HMS Onslow, Jan 1946. Yet not all U-boats were destroyed. Some were secretly examined, stripped and studied. In dry docks and naval laboratories across Britain and America, engineers and intelligence officers swarmed over their finds. They dismantled pressure hulls, periscopes and guidance systems, marveling at the precision of German engineering. The Type WWII, Germany's revolutionary electro-boot, was unlike anything the Allies had. Faster underwater than on the surface, it could remain submerged for days and reload torpedoes in minutes. It was a design decades ahead of its time. U.S. Naval Technical Mission to Europe Report 1945. For the men who built them, there was both pride and despair. Many German engineers, like Helmuth Walter, pioneer of the high-test peroxide propulsion system, were now prisoners of their own genius. Their expertise became bargaining chips in the new geopolitical chessboard, forming between the victors. Some would be recruited under secret Allied programs. Others would vanish behind Soviet lines. Allied Interrogation Summary 1946. Across Europe, rumors spread that not all U-boats had been accounted for. In Argentina, fishermen spoke of ghostly submarines surfacing near Patagonia. In Norway, locals whispered of steel shadows resting on fjord floors, their crews still aboard. And deep within Allied archives, certain serial numbers were quietly marked as unrecovered. British Admiralty Confidential Memo 1947. The oceans themselves seemed to guard their secrets well. Divers decades later would find skeletal remains of men still seated at their stations, coffee cups rusted beside them, gauges frozen mid-dive. Time had preserved their final moments better than any photograph could. But in 1945, the Allies were less concerned with ghosts and more with knowledge. Every bolt and circuit could offer an edge in the next war, the one already brewing between former Allies. Soviet inspection teams in Berlin demanded access to U-boat factories. American and British teams moved faster, spiriting key designs and personnel westward before the Iron Curtain descended. U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence Memo, OG 1945. The end of one war had birthed the beginning of another, and beneath that transition lay the steel carcasses of a fleet that had once terrorized the world. Yet within those drowned hulls, within the echoing chambers of the Type WWII, lay the blueprint for the future of submarine warfare. Nuclear propulsion, streamlined hulls, advanced sonar, all would trace their lineage to these final, desperate innovations of a dying empire. As Allied engineers sketched diagrams and tested prototypes, one question lingered in the minds of all who examined them. Had the Germans, in their final months, glimpsed the future of undersea warfare before anyone else? The answer would not come from the battlefields of Europe, but from secret naval test ranges across the Atlantic, where captured U-boats would be reborn under new flags. And soon what had once been the weapon of a fallen Reich would become the cornerstone of the next global confrontation. By the summer of 1945, the Allies had begun the meticulous process of examining every captured U-boat that had survived the scuttling orders. Hidden in the bowels of dry docks from Portsmouth to Boston, engineers peeled back the layers of German ingenuity, revealing secrets that would redefine naval warfare. The Type WWII electroboot, in particular, sent shockwaves through Allied circles. Unlike previous submarines, it could cruise submerged for days, powered by massive battery banks and a streamlined hull that reduced hydrodynamic drag to near silence. U.S. Naval Technical Mission, OG 1945. Lieutenant Commander Henry G. Taylor oversaw one such evaluation at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The submarine lay on supports, her keel exposed, electric motors humming as technicians probed wiring and hull integrity. Engineers from Electric Boat, General Electric and Westinghouse crowded around, recording measurements, photographing panels, and marking components for reproduction. The war had been lost, but here a new victory was being forged, one not of fire and steel, but of knowledge. Philadelphia Naval Shipyard Technical Report, SEP 1945. The most striking feature was the Type WWII's propulsion. Two powerful Siemens Schuckert electric motors, each generating 5,000 shaft horsepower, could drive the boat at 17 knots submerged, faster than the maximum surface speed of any Allied submarine at the time. Its 6 2,000 ampere-hour battery banks allowed it to remain underwater for 75 nautical miles at 5 knots, a feat previously thought impossible. Engineers marveled at the compact high-voltage wiring layout, which minimized energy loss and allowed rapid recharge from the diesel generators. Technical Manual TM 94409, 1945. The Allied realization was immediate. The Type WWII could operate virtually undetected beneath the Atlantic, evading sonar and outlasting conventional escorts. Intelligence officers quickly compared it with the fleet's current best, the Gato class, and understood the tactical implications. The U-boat could strike convoys and vanish before countermeasures could be deployed. U.S. Navy Anti-Submarine Warfare Analysis, OCT 1945. To test these theories, several Type WWII submarines were recommissioned under Allied flags for evaluation exercises. Lieutenant Commander Taylor piloted the first American-controlled unit, now christened U-2518, under a temporary designation. The test ranges off Cape Cod were alive with tension. Sonar operators, destroyers, and observation aircraft all coordinated to challenge the U-boat's performance. As it submerged and slipped silently beneath detection ranges, observers leaned forward, disbelief etched on their faces. "It's like it's swimming in the shadows themselves," muttered one sonar technician. Dramatized composite, U.S. Naval Experimental Submarine Report, NOV 1945. The Type WWII's design excellence extended beyond propulsion. Its hull was pressure-tested to 300 meters, deeper than any Allied boat could safely operate. The conning tower featured a low-profile radar-absorbent design, while hydrophone arrays allowed detection of enemy vessels from over 15 kilometers away. Torpedo tubes were fully automated, capable of rapid reloads in under 10 minutes, a quantum leap compared to the manual operations of previous submarines. Each component bore the marks of meticulous German engineering. Rivets spaced for minimal hull stress, welded joints hand-polished for hydrodynamic efficiency. Allied Technical Assessment, DEC 1945. Production secrets were equally enlightening. Shipyards in Hamburg and Kiel had perfected modular assembly long before Allied factories adopted similar techniques. Sections of the pressure hull were constructed independently, then joined with precision alignment jigs. Electric motors were tested individually before installation. These insights prompted immediate changes in American and British submarine manufacturing practices, leading to faster construction and more reliable vessels. Engineers like William F. Gibbs and Lawrence R. Johnson spearheaded the adaptation of these methods to Guppy-class conversions, setting the stage for post-war naval dominance. U.S. Bureau of Ships Production Memo, Jan 1946. The true measure of the Type WWII's impact came during training simulations. Allied destroyers attempted to locate the submarine with active sonar, depth charges set to test hull endurance. Each time, the electroboot slipped beneath the search patterns, emerging hours later with minimal wear. Tactical officers, previously skeptical of U-boat capabilities, began revising anti-submarine doctrines. Convoy strategies, sonar deployment, and escort formations were rewritten based on what had once been the weapon of a defeated enemy. U.S. Atlantic Fleet War Games Report, Feb 1946. A critical exercise unfolded in March 1946 off the coast of Bermuda. Hugh 3008, another captured Type WWII, faced a simulated convoy escorted by a squadron of Gato-class boats and destroyer escorts. The U-boat approached submerged at 12 knots, weaving silently through sonar nets. By the time the escorts detected its presence, it had launched torpedoes and disappeared into deeper waters. The exercise concluded with a sobering assessment. Without the lessons learned from the Akutan-inspired reconnaissance of Type WWII hulls, Allied forces might have been caught off guard in any future conflict. U.S. Navy Operational Evaluation, Mar 1946. The operational implications were profound. Not all captured U-boats were intended for testing. Several Type 7s and 9s were allocated to the Soviets under post-war agreements, where their engineers adapted the designs for the nascent Soviet submarine fleet. The Americans and British retained the more advanced Type WWIIs and several experimental models. Each evaluation mission revealed incremental advantages: sonar dampening techniques, snorkel endurance, and torpedo fire control systems that would influence submarine warfare for decades. Soviet Naval Acquisition Report 1946. Yet the human element remained central. Sailors who had once served on the Kriegsmarine U-boats were debriefed extensively. Their first-hand knowledge of operational quirks, submerged endurance, and crew management informed Allied training programs. American engineers learned, for instance, how German crews managed battery heat and ventilation to maximize underwater performance. These lessons were integrated into U.S. Navy manuals,